All right. Good morning, everyone. My name's Samantha Pilz. So thank you for jumping on today for my latest webinar. This one will be on developing emotional intelligence using DiSC. So most likely a very prevalent topic at the moment, hopefully something that you'll all get a lot out of, even if that's just stimulating some thought and some discussions as to how this relates to you and your team. So it is right on 11 o'clock, so we are going to get started. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we'll go over them at the end. All right, so because we're looking at emotional intelligence for today, we're going to start out by defining what we actually mean by that. So how we're defining emotional intelligence is that it's a person's ability to identify their emotions so that they can understand how those feelings influence their actions. And the point of this is that we ideally would all like to be agile in our emotional intelligence. And what this means, emotional intelligence, therefore, is the ability to read the emotional and interpersonal needs of a situation and respond accordingly. So another way to think of it is that emotional agility is a person's ability to experience their thoughts and emotions and events in a way that doesn't drive them to negative behaviors, but instead it encourages them to reveal the best of themselves. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize our feelings in the moment, which allows us to acknowledge how we're feeling and use these emotions and change them in order to achieve the best response to a situation. So when we're looking at emotional intelligence, it's widely agreed that basically there are 4 key components which make up emotional intelligence. And the first is self-awareness. So this is the first step in emotional intelligence. And emotional self-awareness is the ability to accurately perceive your emotions and to remain aware of them as they're happening. So this is important because a recent report from the Australian Institute of Management actually found that self-awareness is a necessity in good leadership. And it's been found that 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence and high self-awareness. So the next step is then self-management, which is that once we're aware of our emotions and we have the ability to regulate them, we can exercise self-control and we can adapt to our situations and show initiative. So we're self-managing. The third step is that we're moving beyond ourselves and expanding towards others. So we're becoming socially aware, social awareness. And this includes things like empathy, awareness of the people around you, how they're likely feeling emotionally, basically picking up on the cues of the people around us. And then the final step is relationship management, which is where you can actually adjust your actions and your mindset based on your situation, the emotions of not just yourself, but also of the people around you. So this is where you're exercising sort of your influence and control over others, you're adapting to the situation in order to be able to create positive relationships and be able to relate to the people around us and the situations that we find ourselves in. And this is a graphic that I wanted to put in here because I really like how it shows that these 4 components of emotional intelligence, yes, we develop emotional intelligence by building up through stages 1, 2, 3, 4, but they are all linked to each other. So you can see in that graphic on the left, we have a column for self. So what I know about myself, which is self-awareness, and what I do myself, which is that self-management. And then on the right, we have in relation to others. So the 3rd and 4th stages of emotional intelligence. What I know about others is my social awareness. And what I do in relation to others is how I manage relationships, so relationship management. And they're the 4 key components that we need to become emotionally intelligent. Now, another graphic that I really like is this one demonstrating EQ versus IQ. So our emotional quotient versus our intellectual quotient. And this is really because we invest in the modern world, in education and business, we're investing a lot into our IQs. So, you know, what that involves, you can see over on the right there: analysis, know-how, technological expertise, concept and design, critical thinking, patterns and logic. These are the less emotive signs or sides of intelligence. Very, very important and usually highly emphasized in the modern world. But in the past, we haven't seen the same emphasis placed on our emotional intelligence, and we are seeing a bit of a change there. People are becoming more aware of the importance of it, but it's still something that I think we are really trying to play catch up on. But it is just as important. So our empathy, motivation, self-reflection, how we manage relationships, our social awareness, and our self-control. So both of these things, both IQ and EQ, can actually be developed and improved. And so why wouldn't we want to develop both aspects of intelligence? And this is largely because there are very few people who in their day-to-day, in work, in their relationships, we're not relying on other people, and we're not interacting with other people. So logically, it makes sense that we're not just developing our technical know-how and our product knowledge, but also our people knowledge and emotional intelligence. So that's a really nice way of sort of demonstrating the differences and how both of them really play a part in modern business. And so even though it seems logical anyway, I want to look at why we should be improving our emotional intelligence. And this is largely because I'd argue that in business, people are actually a business's most valuable resource. So in the modern world, we have constantly developing technological advancements, global economies. Businesses and people are all looking for an edge, a way to get ahead. But put simply, really, the edge is ourselves and our staff. So in 2020, emotional intelligence was rated as one of the top 10 skills to have in business, and that's according to the World Economic Forum. So self-awareness, emotional intelligence, it's long been pinpointed as one of the most vital capabilities that leaders need to develop. So let me put this in a way that I think everyone can relate to. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were trying to relate to a person, you were trying to connect with someone, and they were really just not getting you? So they weren't getting where you were coming from, and you felt like you were banging your head against a wall. So the sense of frustration that this caused. And for example, this happened to me recently, where something negative had happened to me, and I reached out to someone, just wanting someone to talk to, wanting them to listen and empathize with me. But instead, they immediately jumped on and started trying to problem solve my situation and to come up with a solution for me, which wasn't what I was wanting out of that interaction. And it didn't make me feel any better. So it didn't help my sense of connection with that person, and it didn't help how I was feeling emotionally either. And it's not that that person wasn't trying to help, but they were just responding in a way that was more natural to them and probably what they would do in that situation for themselves. But if they'd maybe stepped back and actually thought about the situation and my needs and their response, they may have come up with a different approach. And so this is basically where emotional intelligence comes in and where it's important. And the other thing is that studies have actually shown, and common sense, I would imagine as well, is that high levels of emotional intelligence are linked with higher levels of personal success and the ability to overcome setbacks. So resilience, personal resilience, which makes sense because people with a higher emotional intelligence may be given the exact same challenges and hurdles as someone with a lower emotional intelligence, but they're not going to be as able to identify their response to the situation. And therefore, if they can't identify their response, they have a lesser chance of being able to moderate it to achieve the best outcome in that situation. So people with a lower emotional intelligence may not even be able to identify what their emotional response is to that situation, and therefore they've got no chance of changing it. So high emotional intelligence is definitely showing as one of the top business skills to have in business and in life. So now that we've gone over what it is and why we need it, how can DiSC help with emotional intelligence? Well, if we remember those 4 stages that I mentioned before, being self-aware, developing the ability to self-manage, becoming socially aware, and then managing our relationships, we essentially need to progressively develop these 4 abilities and continue developing them. So the way this links to DiSC is that DiSC allows us to best understand what drives us and what gives us energy, and then on the opposite side also what drains our energy and what's pulling us down. So DiSC is cluing us into the situations that may appeal to us, which create the emotional highs, or situations that don't appeal to us at all, and they're the ones that we will typically find quite frustrating. So this is where that first stage of emotional intelligence comes in. We're developing our self-awareness, and the profiles are helping to highlight this. And then this is the critical part, is that to develop our emotional intelligence, we have to choose to move away from just being aware to actually learning how to manage our reactions. So this is where self-management comes in. And DiSC helps us with this because it's providing insights about the needs and the inclinations of other people, and providing us with personalized tips and strategies to adapt our approach to others in various situations, which makes us more effective at working with others, building those relationships, and communicating effectively. And so this results in healthier workplaces, stronger relationships, because we're actually tapping into the strengths that we each bring to the table. So you can see here that we're moving through the first 2 stages of emotional intelligence and starting to build on them. But it is important to realize that DiSC in general, including everything DiSC, it's previously been focused only on our behavior. So it's a behavioral tool looking at how we can modify our behavior in relation to others and other styles. But what we want to do now, with the increasing emphasis on being agile and developing agile emotional intelligence, is to also become adaptable to the situations we find ourselves in, and not just the people that we're surrounded by. And so this is where, and what I want to talk about today, is the Everything DiSC Agile EQ Profile. And why this is so great is because it helps us take emotional intelligence to the next level, or the next 2 levels really. So we're moving through the 4 levels of emotional intelligence. And what it does is it's actively helping to train our emotional response and actually change our mindsets in certain situations. So not just looking at our behavior in regards to other people, but our mindsets and the way we think about situations to try and shape our responses more positively. And part of the reason that this is so important is because ultimately we are naturally creatures of habit. And so we have this natural tendency to become stuck in certain patterns of behavior, which can make it difficult to choose the most effective response when something in your situation changes. So we're becoming agile and adaptable. So with Agile EQ, what it does is, 1, it will look at what your natural mindsets are based on your DiSC style. It will look at how much effort it takes for you personally to use each mindset, and we'll go into the mindsets a little bit more in a second. Then 3, how can you manage your response and learn to develop alternate mindsets? So we're starting to get into that relationship management. And it also provides action planning, pathways for development. So it gives you some next steps beyond the profile and beyond your session. And the beauty of the Agile EQ profile, as with every DiSC profile, everything DiSC profile, is that it's completely personalized to you and your DiSC style, which is key because based on your style, certain mindsets are going to come more naturally to you, the same as how certain behaviors feel more comfortable. So because we're all coming from different places on the DiSC map, we're all stretching to different mindsets outside of our natural comfort zones. This is going to require different strategies for all of us moving in different directions. So in the scenario that I gave before, that person who was trying to problem solve for me was most likely a D-style person. And they were really struggling to take on a more empathizing, receptive mindset to what I was trying to tell them. Whereas that empathizing and receptive mindset most likely would have been quite easy and quite natural for someone with more of an S or an I style. But it didn't even occur to that D style person. So obviously the strategies for each of them, for the different styles, developing each mindset is going to be quite different. So the personalization and the profile is really, really important. And this is because basically the way each style is going to approach each mindset is completely unique, and there's no one size fits all kind of scenario. So personalized insights really helping us there. And the profile itself can be broken down really nicely into 3 key components. And this is really nice from a facilitation point of view as well. Section 1 looks at discovery, so people actually understanding their own DiSC style and their natural emotional intelligence mindsets. So getting to know ourselves a bit better. Section 2 is then starting to recognize the advantages and the benefits to other mindsets and the fact that everyone does have different mindsets. So we're moving beyond ourselves and starting to recognize and appreciate the mindsets of all 4 styles. And then lastly, the 3rd section helps with you to act. So develop some action planning, next steps, what you can do to start increasing your emotional intelligence and your approach to each of the mindsets so that you can get the most effective response to your situation, no matter what situation you find yourself in. And so this is because, like I said, EQ can be developed over time, just like IQ. So it's not fixed and you can develop it. So this is something where this profile will see changes over time, not to the DiSC style, but in terms of the amount of effort that the different mindsets are going to require for you to demonstrate. And so this is where the cornerstone principles are really, really important. One, because they sum up really nicely what Agile EQ is, the ability to read the emotional and interpersonal needs of a situation and respond accordingly. But it also really enforces everything that we've just discussed, which is the why and why people are completing this profile and why they should be investing in developing their emotional intelligence. So these are so important to go over. They're really integral to what DiSC is doing and how those learnings can be applied correctly. So I keep on mentioning mindsets to you, and this is the really fun part of the profile. I think this is a really great part. But first of all, what do we mean by mindsets? Well, the Cambridge Dictionary defines mindsets as a person's way of thinking and their opinions. And so anyone who's seen any of us here at Intégro present the whole person concept or the iceberg model, you would know that thinking and feeling sit just below the surface, and they're typically what shape our behavior. So our mindset and the way we think and feel about a certain situation is likely going to drive our behavior. And this is essentially what we're referring to as well when we talk about mindsets in the Agile EQ profile. And so this is what you can see here, the different mindsets for each style. And so, for example, if I pull out the ISSI mindset, which is the empathizing mindset, and the way that's defined as reaching out with compassion, seeking to understand people's emotional needs and struggles, and being supportive. That was really in my scenario that I gave before. That was the mindset that if my friend had taken on and had adopted, would have led to the best outcome in that situation and would have really fed our relationship. But instead, being a natural D style, they more went with their self-assured natural mindset, which means asserting your opinions and rights, projecting confidence in your ideas and abilities, and taking charge of situations. So she was really taking charge of the situation and trying to problem solve for me, which there's nothing wrong with that in the right situations, and this wasn't the right situation. But the other thing that you'll notice about these mindsets, is that they are taking the place of where we usually see priorities in a DiSC profile. And so this layout is really nice. It's very consistent between the DiSC profiles. So they all link together really nicely and they're continually building on one another. But instead of priorities, we now have mindsets. And so this is getting into the second section of the profile, which is recognizing other mindsets and their value. So we don't want to stay stuck just in our natural mindsets, because otherwise we're stuck. And like I said, this is because we do have a tendency to gravitate towards the mindsets that come most naturally to us, and need to learn to identify this and question whether that's actually the most appropriate response in that scenario, or if adopting a different mindset and taking a different approach would benefit more. So we have to be willing to question and accept that there may be a better way of approaching things than how we will naturally respond or automatically respond. So like I said before, the cornerstone principles of DiSC, they're really telling us that all styles are equally valuable, and therefore the different mindsets are also equally valuable in the appropriate situation. All right, so how does the Agile EQ profile do this, and how does it help us to start recognizing the value in other mindsets? So putting ourselves in the shoes of a participant, taking on the profile. What it does is it proposes agile opportunities for learners. And this is because every interaction we have, every scenario we're in, it's an opportunity to be agile and develop our emotional intelligence. And because the profile is personalized, it's written to you using a narrative style, the same as the other DiSC profiles, and it will actually explain to you why stretching to a different mindset may help, and it may be more beneficial to you than a natural mindset. So you can see it does this by providing theoretical scenarios. The first is try this on. So try this scenario on, and it invites participants to step into a particular situation and envision how there may be a better approach to that situation. So what are the pros and cons of taking on a different mindset? And also, how much effort would that take for them based on their response to the DiSC survey? And this is where another change to the DiSC profile comes in, is that we have effort meters. So while mindsets have replaced the priorities, we also have effort meters for each of the mindsets, which is looking at how much effort that particular mindset will take for you. And this is also looking at, in the past, we have additional priorities. In this profile, rather than additional mindsets, we just have mindsets that will display as taking not much effort at all. So that first graphic on the right, you can see not taking much effort at all. That one's quite easy. However, the graphic below, that one's going to take quite a bit more effort for me to display. And this is a really nice way to display a participant's profile and outcomes. A lot of profiles, when they're addressing emotional intelligence, they may look at a score or a rating as a high, low, average, whatever level it is, emotional intelligence, which can be quite harsh if the outcome's not as favorable as we would like. But what effort meters do, instead of giving a score, is it's indicating the effort that this will require, how much work you need to put into it, but it's also enforcing that any mindset's possible. We can develop our EQ, and we can improve, and we can change those effort meters, you know, from the red to the yellow to the green. So over time, we work on our mindsets, we can develop our EQ. And so once participants have had a look at their mindsets, what comes naturally to them, and they're starting to understand the value of other mindsets, they're trying on their scenarios, what they do next is, again, in their profile, completely personalized to them, they need to get into these mindsets. But how do they know where to start? Well, the profile actually breaks it down really nicely for them. You can see that little snippet that I've taken out on the left there. Where should you start? Well, it gives 3 categories of beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Based on the statements that relate to each of those levels, you can pick where you are. So I may decide I'm actually still very much the beginner level. So those statements I think really apply to me. And what that does is I can then move to the where should I start section, the snippet on the right. And I can have a look at that beginner step, and it's actually giving me some suggestions for working on that mindset and tips for how I can develop it. I can then, as I develop over time and I'm getting really good with those beginner steps, I can come back, I can move through the intermediate steps. So again, I'm building up through this particular mindset and developing my ability to adopt this mindset quite easily when the situation calls for it. And this then links into the action planning. As with all DiSC profiles, we do have action planning at the end. And this is because the real benefit from all of the profiles actually comes out when we continue the learnings beyond our session, beyond reading the profile. So learners will actually pick out a mindset to work on. And then the action planning asks them to reflect on why they chose that, the benefits they'll see out of it, and how they're going to go about developing that mindset. So this is really good. It encourages participants to set follow-up for themselves and helps them remain accountable. So the profile basically works through from identifying DiSC styles and mindsets all the way through to actually creating actionable steps for them to follow and become more emotionally intelligent. So then from a facilitator and administrator point of view, what do we have to support this profile? Well, firstly, as with 6 of the 7 available DiSC profiles, everything except the 363 for leaders, we always have facilitator kits. These are great. So we have the Agile EQ Facilitator Kit that has all of your presentation, handouts, videos, guides to run a half-day session. The facilitator kits also come with virtual activity guides, so how you can translate that session from a half-day face-to-face session into a 2-hour interactive virtual session, because a lot of us are still working remotely. We're not able to get teams all into one place for a session. So it's very important that we can actually still deliver these trainings and these programs virtually. So that comes with the kits as well. Participants who complete the Agile EQ profile will also get access to myeverythingdisc.com, and they can complete unlimited comparison reports with anyone else who's done a DiSC profile, either through their myeverythingdisc.com account or through Epic. An administrator can do that for them. It's also, Agile EQ is also the second of 4 profiles to be available on the brand new Everything DiSC on Catalyst platform. And there's actually a great discount for Catalyst users upgrading to Agile EQ, where the Agile EQ profile is usually 25 Epic credits as a standalone profile, unless you complete it through Catalyst, where it's only a 10 credit upgrade from Workplace. So that saves you 15 credits total. And if for any reason you don't know what Catalyst is or what I'm talking about here, then CEO Keith is actually running another webinar on that, which is coming up on the 23rd of February. So if anyone would like the link to register to that, let me know. I can find that and put that in the chat or email you guys so we can do that for you. And then lastly, on the topic of Agile EQ, because this is one of our newer profiles, it only just came out last year, which was perfect timing. Everyone needing to learn to become agile and emotionally intelligent and adapt to our current situation. You can join me. We are running a short course on the Agile EQ profile. Participants will all complete a profile, and then you'll attend a 2-hour facilitated course with myself on March 5th, where we'll actually be going through your profile in a small group setting and creating some action planning around this. So this is really great for either facilitators who haven't used the Agile EQ profile before but are interested to see how that translates from a participant perspective, or anyone who's just looking to develop themselves and develop their emotional intelligence. So anyone is more than welcome. You can register for that on our website. But it is certainly a very interesting profile. And ultimately, what I want you to take away from this last half an hour is remembering that you can develop your EQ just the same as your IQ, but it takes practice. The same as IQ, we have to work on it, we have to develop it. Ways that you can do this, having your Agile EQ profile with you and the action plan nearby and actually referring to it. You can create reminders on your calendar, set aside time in your week for personal development, visiting these mindsets, And as you master one step or one mindset and you are more comfortable in each scenario, you can move on to the next one. So this is very much a process and something that you can easily build on. So hopefully everyone got something out of that. I can see, Tammy, I will email you with the mindsets slide. You can see that in the samples of the Agile EQ profile. So if anyone does want to have a closer look at the profile, you can generate a sample of it from your Epic platform. But I'll send one of them through to you, Tammy. I know we moved through them quite quickly, and it is a very, very interesting slide, and it's very interesting to look at those different mindsets and what the DiSC styles find quite easy. Caroline, I can send out the mindsets, but we typically don't share slides from our presentations, but let me know if there's any particular information that you would like, and I can see what I can do with that. So if there's anything that you want to use, a lot of the information we use does come from the facilitator kits, and so obviously they are just for people who own facilitator kits. And then Catriona, can people do your workshop in March if they don't have a DiSC profile? The workshop includes an Agile EQ profile. So for that 250 plus GST, we will send you a link to complete the Agile EQ profile, and you bring that with you to the session. Otherwise, if you have already completed an Agile EQ profile, but would still like to attend the session, give us a buzz, contact us here in the office, or email support@intégro.com.au, and we can get you into that course using the profile that you've already completed. And Jane Murray, yes, I will also send you a screenshot of the mindset slide. So just checking if there's any other questions. Thank you for the feedback, guys. And Caroline, if we want to undergo the Agile EQ, best to attend your course. You can either, if you have an Epic account, you can complete an Agile EQ profile through your Epic account. It's 25 credits as a standalone profile. But if you'd like to see the facilitated side of it and actually go through that in a group setting, then the short courses are a really great way to do that. So would love to have you on there, but completely up to you. The Agile EQ profile is available in all Epic accounts. So anyone with an Epic account will have access to that. So, and I've got a few people requesting that mindset slide. I will make a list of everyone and send that through for you. And I think that is all of the questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? Please also feel free, if you do have, yes, why don't I just go back to the mindset slide quickly? That's a great idea. If you do have any other questions or you'd like to discuss the profile further, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me in the office, and would be more than happy to talk about this for you. So always great to hear from you. It's a great new profile. It's definitely something that is very, very current, especially in this situation. And it does build on from everything DiSC previously, just looking at behaviors. This is really starting to get into the mindsets that drive those behaviors. So it's looking at a more subconscious level. So it's a really great profile in that way. But thank you all so much for attending and for spending part of your morning with me. I really appreciate that. And I will contact all of you who have requested that slide. And I look forward to seeing you on another webinar or hopefully my short course soon. Thanks, guys.